Ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Market Watch Mondays. This is the first episode of the offseason because now that week 16 is, assuming that you guys don't play in week 17 leagues, hopefully you do not. But if you don't, championships are already done, which means now it's just enjoyable time. This time of the year is basically fantasy is a little bit in the back burner for me. I still do a lot of sports betting, and then obviously just watch the game for the fun of it. And then I start digging into research, man. Just start researching the off season. This is the best part of the season for me. If you guys are watching the games today, there's some crazy stuff going on still. A lot of fantasy relevant stuff. We'll kind of go over a couple of them really briefly. But the point of this episode is to go over a couple of topics which are not really related to the games, which is why I can record while the games are still going on. I have it in the background. But yeah, lots to cover today. So want to get into it. But before we do, man, you know what time it is. Hit that intro.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
This week, lots of stuff going on here. A couple relevant injuries. Mike Evans looks like he injured his knee. I don't know which part of his knee is. If you guys want to find that out, go on to Twitter to follow the Twitter doctors out there. I'm sure one of them will tell you, but it looked pretty nasty. He kind of bent it like inwards almost. So that doesn't matter because the fantasy playoffs are already over. It didn't look like it was a one that would basically take him out into next season. So I'm assuming he'll be back next year. And Mike Evans continues to be, in my opinion, one of the more underrated assets and wide receivers. I'll probably continue to buy on him next year, buy on Chris Godwin. All the people that said Tom Brady's washed, put on that clown makeup because he looks pretty damn good. Looks pretty damn good to me. I had him pegged as a playoff league winner, and that's exactly what he did for us down the stretch. In my opinion, still the GOAT. Patrick Mahomes probably a better quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback, but to me, GOAT depends on accomplishments, and nobody's accomplished more than our boy TB12. So, love to see him ripping it up. One of his best statistical seasons, probably going back to that magical 2007 year. Put up 40 plus tutties. Obviously, one of the best, I guess, offensive lineups he's had. Right, he had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown, and plus Rob Gronkowski, obviously. So obviously one of the best receiving cores he's ever played with, and that bore fruit, man. He came out. He was a top 10 quarterback on a totals basis, and then I think QB 11 on a points per game basis because of Dak jumping up to QB 1 there. But yeah, overall, pretty successful season for Tom Brady. Is he washed? Will he be washed next year? Who the fuck knows? I'm not gonna bet on the GOAT. But if people already assume that he's going to be washed, which seems to be the case with most of Twitter, most of Dynasty Twitter, I think I'm going to try and acquire those assets at a discount. Mike Evans probably going to be available at a discount like he is in most years because people overvalue consistency and floor when it comes to wide receivers. When really all you should care about is league winning, week winning upside, which is exactly what Mike Evans does and what he did for us in week 16. I actually fell at his hands across a couple of leagues, having to go up against him despite having Alvin Kamara. Took an L. Didn't think I'd see that happening, but you know what? That's fantasy, man. That's the beauty of the game. That's why we play it. It's the thrills, it's the ups and downs, it's the emotional roller coaster that it takes you through, the pain, the gains, and everything in between, man. We love this game because of that. So, having said all of that, Mike Evans, interesting prospect. Another interesting buy prospect going into the offseason if you're a contending team. Another one that got injured, T. Higgins, hurt his leg today. Hate to see that. I hate to see it when freaking stars get injured in week 17, meaningless games, which is exactly what it was for the Bengals. But you know what? They want to get young guys out there for experience. So I get that part of it as well. But, T. Higgins getting injured sucks. But, season's over. She has a long period to recovery, a long time to recovery, and he'll be fine. And as I mentioned in last week's episode, he is one of my top targets. And the reason why he's one of my top targets is because I think you can still get him at a discount. Not a buy low because he's been incredibly good. And I think people have caught on to that. But a discount from where he will be 1 year, 2 years from now. And where he will be 1 year, 2 years from now is I think he has the potential to be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. That's how good he is. That's how good his rookie season was. But it's just clouded by the turnover at quarterback after Joe Burrow went down. He's been catching passes from Ryan Finley. A lot of like plays that have been called back, long bombs, penalties, things of that nature for him this year. But I've loved what I've seen from him as an alpha wide receiver out of the gate. He is a discounted version of Justin Jefferson, who you are no longer going to be able to get, especially after today. Justin Jefferson broke the rookie wide receiver receiving record previously held by all-time great Anquan Bolden. One of my favorite players, super physical wide receiver. He's on, like, if you look at the record books, man, he's on all of them. He is one of the most underrated and underappreciated wide receivers that have come out in the last couple of decades, and he belongs in the Hall of Fame. So Justin Jefferson coming out and smashing that record immediately as a rookie, taking over as the alpha dog in his offense, in a low passing volume offense, putting up this kind of yard, a traditionally low passing volume offense, putting up this kind of yardage and this kind of performance is nothing short of incredible. This is one of the greatest rookie performances of all time. I think OBJ's rookie season is probably still, I'd rank that a little bit higher, even though he didn't play a full season. But in terms of the peaks that OBJ reached, it was incredible, and he was a league winner out of the gate. Justin Jefferson, absolutely that. He's going to be untouchable in Dynasty. If you didn't acquire Justin Jefferson before this year, you're not going to be able to acquire him, because I have a feeling he's probably going to go in the first round of Superflex drafts next year. I mean, he was already a top 3 Dynasty wide receiver for me and many others. And after this, he might be the Dynasty wide receiver 1. I mean, there's really no like great arguments against it. I mean, historic rookie production, only up to go from here. He's tethered to, in my opinion, a very underrated and a pretty damn good quarterback in Kirk Cousins, a very accurate deep ball passer as well. I mean, the future is bright for Justin Jefferson. You know, he is. I tweeted this today, but I think there's 3 really, really untouchable dynasty assets going forward. Doesn't mean they're the most valuable. I just mean they're like going to be really, really impossible to trade for. One of them is Justin Jefferson. The other, which we'll cover next, is DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, a lot of people vaulted him into their wide receiver 1 conversation. And him and Justin Jefferson are very similar, right? Like both very, very young, high upside alpha wide receiver 1 roles, both tethered to decent quarterbacks, and elite quarterback in the case of DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson, and both in offenses that are a little bit stale, a little bit run heavy, but doesn't really matter because they are target hogs and target monsters. And they're both extremely young. I mean, DK Metcalf was a rookie last year. He's in his second year. Justin Jefferson's a 21-year-old rookie now in his first year. So age really doesn't really play a factor there. If you have DK Metcalf as your wide receiver 1, great. If you have Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 1, great as well. Nothing against it. I still have Tyreek Hill as my wide receiver 1. Maybe after this year I'll have to reassess, but I have all 3 of them in that same type of grouping along with AJ Brown as well, and then Tay Adams. The wide receiver at the top. I mean, we're blessed with a lot of studs, and then there's more and more of them coming in. I mean, speaking of Justin Jefferson, right? This is the guy that played second fiddle to Jamar Chase. So you can look at that 2 ways. Either Justin Jefferson was underutilized, which I don't think he was, because he still put up a monster freaking season. If not for Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson would have been in the running for the Blitnikoff, which is the best wide receiver in college. Or you can look at it, in the way that how good can Jamar Chase be if Justin Jefferson was this good and was relegated to the number 2 role, right? How good can he be? Or you can look at it that, Justin Jefferson was underutilized. I don't know how you're gonna look at it. Personally, I have Jamar Chase as my wide receiver 1. I think he is that level of stud. I don't care that he held out of this season. I mean, I've said this before, but I think, forcing players to play 3 years is just the NCAA's aka the cartel way of keeping labor costs low and having that revenue generating profit center by forcing these players to play. So I'm actually glad that COVID came through and gave some of these really top end talented players the chance to just basically opt out and not risk further injury. I mean, I've seen enough from Jamar Chase in that 1 year in the SEC, in one of the best offenses ever, to comfortably place him as my wide receiver 1. So, if you have, I had an interesting tweet. I forgot who it was. One of the guys over at FF Astronauts. I think it was Rish, but basically said, imagine having Justin Jefferson ranked in your top 5, but not having Jamar Chase there. And that was an interesting discussion for me. For me, I have Justin Jefferson as a top 3 dynasty wide receiver already, potentially the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. It doesn't matter. It's the same tier. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't care about the 1, 2, 3. I just care about the tiering. but I already have him up there, and I can't place Jamar Chase up there just because even though we've seen how good he is in college, there's always that risk of transferring to the NFL. So it just never makes sense for me to put a proven NFL player who is also young and also a stud over an incoming rookie. So I probably won't have them that close. I don't know if I'll have Jamar Chase in my top 10 because I've gone through my wide receiver rankings and I really, really like where they're at. I have T. Higgins in my top 10 as well. And I have CeeDee Lamb up there as well. But I mean, in terms of just pure prospect profiles, right? Jamar Chase I would have him if I combine the 2020 and 2021 class. And I tweeted this earlier, but like as prospects, I would have had Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman last year, and Rondale Moore potentially as the top three prospects if it was in a combined class in the same tier as CeeDee Lamb. But I would probably have all three of them ahead of them. That's how good I think this 2021 wide receiver class is, especially at the top, but even deeper down the middle. It is filled with studs. So I don't know where Jamar Chase will shake out. It takes me time to do rankings, and that's why I don't really rush to like launch rankings right away. I don't really care about being first. I've talked about this before. I think, in today's world where like people are all about like clickbait and being first and, getting eyeballs and being attention grabbers and having hot takes and all that, like I don't really care about any of that, right? What I care about is being right. And I think it takes time to go through the data, sift through the season, go through the process to actually land in rankings that I reckon really stand behind, right? And I did that for the combined 2020 and 2021 quarterback class, because honestly, there isn't as much information to process there. That one was pretty clear to me, so I put that out and tweeted that out. But wide receivers take me the longest time because you got to gather the data, you got to do the run the analytics, you got to do the calcs, then you got to incorporate the film, then I got to layer in my own experience, my own process, my we'll call it my judgment, my biased and subjective judgment on top of it, which is hopefully what you guys come to the channel for. That's my value add, is being able to take in all the information, looking at it from a high level, from all of it, and putting everything in context and then arriving at a decision. That's how I build my ranks. It takes me time to do that, which is why you're not going to see a combined 2021 and 2020 rookie class yet. But I will be working on those, and I will be releasing those stage by stage. Quarterbacks are out. Next is going to be probably wide receivers. Takes me the longest amount of time, and then I'll do running backs, and then potentially tight ends. Even though it's not really that interesting, I'll probably look at it maybe even like a 3-year sample, so I can capture TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant as well, because last year's tight end class was just putrid. We all know that, right? So that's the process I'm going to go through to kind of do these ranks. So stay patient, stay with me. Like I said, I want to be right, and it takes time to do these things right. You don't want to be one of those guys that just slaps rankings out there and like does it quick to be fast, because like to put quality rankings out there, it does take a lot of time, and that's why you don't see a lot of the great top end analysts I follow just like slap rankings together and throw them out to be quick, right? It takes time, so be patient. Those will be coming. But in the meantime, there's a couple of topics that I did want to cover today. Oh, yeah, before I get to that, the third untouchable asset, it's your boy, Jonathan Taylor. I've held strong. I've had him as my top running back in the rookie class all year long. I've actually had him in my top 5 dynasty rookie running backs all year long, I'm pretty sure. Like, even during that little stretch in November, maybe like back end of October where, he wasn't looking great, and I tweeted that he wasn't looking great, I held strong because it takes time. It takes time. You can't give up on these people like after half a season. And we were rewarded with patience. I mean, today went out there, balled again, set I think a rookie Colts record, right? 1,000 yards rushing, as well as on the TD side. Like I think it was some combination record. I don't know what the records are, man. Like there's always records. Every freaking team, it's hard to keep track of. But his stock is up. I mean, he's looked fantastic over the past few weeks running the ball. You might want to, say that's bad against bad offenses. I don't care. You can call it whatever you want, but he's looked better running, and he's gained his confidence. He looked a lot more like the guy he was in college. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. I've had him up there forever. He's in that like, that tier 2 bucket. I don't even call it tier 2. Maybe it's a tier 1 big bucket, but it's trade-offs in that bucket between the CMC, Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor. Like that group of guys, it's just a trade-off between what you want to see and what you need in your team. If you're a competing team and you want to keep riding it with Dalvin Cook and etc., I don't blame you. I personally would take Jonathan Taylor over them because I don't think you lose too much and you gain a bunch of youth on the back end. But it's just a matter of preference. But I do still prefer Saquon Barkley over Jonathan Taylor just because of the involvement in the running game. in the passing game. And I do think Saquon Barkley was a better prospect and is a better NFL player than Jonathan Taylor still today. So I would take CMC and I'd probably take Saquon Barkley over him, but everyone else is kind of in the same fair conversation in terms of where he ranks. But he's going to be damn near unattainable. I talked about him costing probably 3 firsts back on earlier in the season. I was probably, a bit early on that, but that's probably where we'll land going forward. I mean, it's going to be tough to acquire from anything less than that, unless you're giving up like 2 first round picks and plus something, then maybe you might get him. But it's honestly going to be a tough buy. So those are 3 guys. If you have them, great. I have a lot of Jonathan Taylor because obviously I had him as my rookie 101. So I'm going to just ride those shares and hopefully carry him to a championship next season. But if you don't have them, it's going to be tough to buy. Like when I say people are untouchable, it's not that you can't buy them. What I mean is like it's going to take so much ammo and so much resources for you to acquire them that it might end up like crippling your team. Because very few teams after the startup will have like enough ammo required to buy some of these assets. That's why guys like Barkley were never attainable until he got hurt and I went on and acquired a bunch of them, right? That's why guys like CMC were not attainable until he got hurt and you could acquire him. Like unless there's like an injury and you can buy for an injury discount, it's going to be really, really tough to acquire these types of assets. So that's what I mean when I say they are untouchable, and they are probably 3 of the most untouchable assets in Dynasty. But today, I want to cover some other topics as well. I put out a tweet. I don't know if you saw it. If you didn't, go to my Twitter. It's pinned. I did a little digging on Konami Code quarterbacks and how important they are, right? And everyone knows, I think at this point, that having a rushing quarterback is a good advantage, right? And it's almost like people will probably say it's almost like it's common sense, right? But for me, I really need to just prove things out for me. Like a lot of times something you think is common sense, might not be when you look actually at the numbers. Like a good example of that would be like the crowded wide receiver theory that people have had for many years. But great Peter Howard proved that to be false to a degree. So a lot of these things where people think it's like common sense, I like to test it out to make sure that it is. But even beyond that, Konami Code originates, from Lord Reeves. I talked about this a little bit in Twitter, in terms of what it came from, and it means the ultimate cheat code, right? And having a rushing quarterback used to be one of the greatest advantages at the quarterback position, because a rushing yard, 10 yards of rushing is equal to 1 point, 25 yards of passing is equal to 1 point. So what that means is one rushing yard is worth 2.5 times as much as a passing yard. And then on the other side of it, if you guys playing 4-point passing TDs, then a rushing TD is obviously 6 points versus 4 points. So that's 1.5 times. So you get a multiplier effect on the Konami Code quarterbacks, which is what gives them that scoring advantage. And historically, if you look at it I've looked at the study for the last 10 years. So from 2011 to 2020, most of the time it's rubber banded between, 2 to 4, averages out at 3. Basically, it was 3 for 4 years straight from 2015 to 2018 in terms of the number of Konami quarterbacks that finish in the top 12. So roughly 25%. And I define Konami as 20% of their production coming from rushing, right? And everyone defines a little bit different. I think Lord Reeves defined as 4 carries. I just like to tie it back to fantasy points, and 20% was like a good cutoff. It basically represented like 30% of total quarterbacks in like the last 10 years that reached that mark. So it is pretty rare. But what happened is in 2020, what you saw was 7 quarterbacks reach that in the top 12. So 58% of the quarterbacks in the top 12 were what you could call Konami quarterbacks. And to give you a sense for who those were, and I did this on a points per game basis, because if you're not looking at points per game, you're doing fantasy incorrectly. You should always be focused on points per game, because weekly upside is what you're looking for. It is a weekly game, even in Dynasty. So Dak Prescott, QB1, 27% of his points from rushing. Kyler Murray, QB2, 63% of his points from rushing. Josh Allen, QB3, 31% from rushing. So the QB1, 2, 3, the top 3 quarterbacks, all 3 are Konami quarterbacks. That is a telling trend. But beyond that, if we keep going, Russell Wilson, QB6, 21% from rushing. Deshaun Watson, QB7, 21% from rushing. Lamar Jackson, QB8, 73% from rushing. So he is the leader, obviously, as you would expect. And then my boy, the Prince, Ryan Tannehill, QB10 with 20% rushing. So 7 of the 12 quarterbacks in the top 12 are Konami Code quarterbacks. What does that mean? It means that this is no longer a cheat code. This is a goddamn necessity that you have to have if you want to be competitive at the quarterback position. If you do not have a Konami quarterback, you are significantly at a disadvantage at the quarterback position, and it is not even close. Like they're out of the top 12, there are only two guys in the top 12 who finish as a QB1. Actually, no, sorry. Two guys. Yeah, two guys in the top 12 who finished as a QB1 that did not have double digit percentage of their production from rushing. And that's Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And that is a special case because if you look at what Aaron Rodgers has done, he is having an absolutely historic season. He is on an MVP pace. He is looking like prime Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, if you look at his stats for the season, he has passed for 4,000 yards, 44 TDs, and 5 interceptions. And that's before today's game, right? And he's already passed for, I think, 3 TDs in today's game. Let me just check here real quick. What is his stat line right now? They scored 21 points. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers already has 3 TDs. So he's at 47 touchdowns, right? And so basically, he's the only one in the top 5, right? And if you're telling me that you need to basically pass for 50 touchdowns and 4,000 plus yards in a season to finish top 5 versus someone like a Kyler Murray or a Dak Prescott or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or John Watson, all these guys that have a shot at that top 5 and they don't need to get anywhere near that because of rushing, which one is more sustainable, right? There aren't many first ballot top 5 all-time quarterbacks out there falling off of trees. I know people are going to say that Trevor Lawrence is that, but we don't know. He's still a prospect. Like if he doesn't live up to the hype, or even if he's just not as good as Aaron Rodgers, like these guys are not falling off trees. It's very, very hard to get those types of seasons. Even Aaron Rodgers has only passed for greater than 40 touchdowns, 3 seasons in his entire career. And this is one of the all-time greats, right? And Tom Brady, where is he? He's a back-end QB1 with 40 plus TDs and like 4,300 yards or 44, like maybe like close to 4,500 yards now after today's year. Like if those are the types of stats you need to put up to finish as a QB1, it is not very sustainable. What is more sustainable is having some rushing production on the ground, especially if you're a dual threat mobile quarterback, someone like Kyler Murray, someone like Lamar Jackson, someone like a Josh Allen. These guys have done it year in and year out. And as much as people want to call for regression, they continue to produce on the ground. Look at Russ and even Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a textbook Konami profile quarterback going back to his prime. Like during his prime years, he was frequently having like 50 to 60 carries, like 200, 300 yards on the ground and a couple TDs on the ground. Like that was a regular occurrence for Aaron Rodgers. So for most of his career, he was a Konami quarterback. It just so happens as of late and recently, he's been more of like a passer and has not been, running as much, understandably so, because he's getting up there in his age. So I say that all that to say this: if you're not targeting a Konami quarterback, you are willingly giving up not even an advantage. You are willingly putting yourself behind the 8 ball and starting behind. You are basically telling the majority of your league, "Hey, you guys can have a head start, and I will try and find a way to catch up later." That is what you're saying. That's not what you want to do. You want to take every single fucking edge you can get in fantasy because they don't come along very often. And the Konami code is very quickly becoming not a cheat code and more of a necessity for survival. And I cover that in the tweet as well. But like, if you think about it, I just talked about the QB1s, right? And most of us play in super flex leagues. So that's just the top end quarterbacks. I didn't really even cover the QB2s. The guys like Joe Burrow, who just barely missed the cut, right? You wouldn't think of him as a Konami quarterback, but he is. He had 22% of his production from rushing, and he finishes QB 13 overall. So literally right on that fringe of points per game basis, just behind Gardner Minshew, the GOAT himself, who obviously is also providing a lot of that rushing production. So look, and then you got Justin Herbert, right? You wouldn't think about him as a Konami quarterback, but he's pretty damn close as well. I chose a 20% cutoff, but Justin Herbert, 18% of his rushing from 18% of his production from rushing. Mahomes, you wouldn't think about him as a Konami quarterback, right? But 12% of his production comes from rushing. He has that little bit of thing built in. So if you are a quarterback that does not offer that at all, I'm probably not going to draft you because, like, short of being a pro caliber Hall of Famer that's throwing for like 600 attempts and has an above average TD rate, you're just not providing the upside that's needed to win leagues. You really, really, really need to stress the Konami Code quarterback. It's more important than ever. And if you look at the incoming class, like this trend is not going away, right? Like oftentimes I see people talk about, hey, I prefer the traditional passer because they're going to last longer. These guys don't last long in the league. But if you look at the trend line, which I'll show you that the graph of the percentage of people in the top 12, it's been trending up like this for 3 years. And it's because of the incoming talent, right? The incoming talent is what dictates how it is going forward. And a lot of these guys are young, right? Josh Allen, third year in the league. Uh, Dak Prescott, still young. Russell Wilson's on the older side, but Deshaun Watson in his prime, third year in the league. Lamar Jackson, right? Also in his prime. Ryan Tannehill, he's a little bit older, but still has many, many years left. These guys are here to stay. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, these are the future of the league. And if you look at the incoming class, Trevor Lawrence, touted as the greatest prospect of all time since Peyton Manning, since John Elway, since Andrew Luck, whatever, take your pick. He You wouldn't think he does, but also provides the Konami floor. He is a pretty dangerous rusher. He is an athletic quarterback. He's a very talented passer, but also provides rushing upside. Justin Fields, we know what he can do. He was the nation's top dual threat quarterback coming into college. He's one of my favorite prospects that I've been following since high school. He actually beat out Trevor Lawrence for the Elite 11 quarterback award, which is something that all the greats have gone through. The Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, they've all gone through that program. Both of these guys are Konami quarterbacks. Why do I have Trey Lance and Zach Wilson ranked ahead of Mac Jones, even though I think Mac Jones is a more pro-ready quarterback? Because he does not provide rushing upside. Trey Lance, Zach Wilson does. Spencer Rattler from the 2022 class, he might be most people's QB1 coming in because he also provides that rushing floor. He's a bit smaller, kind of like Kyler Murray, not as thick as Kyler Murray. He's a little bit thinner, but he kind of provides that same dual threat ability. So if you look at the trend, and that's what this show is all about, is identifying market trends before they happen. Konami quarterbacks are here to stay. I mean, in 1 to 2 years from now, I wouldn't be shocked if 80% of the QB1s are all rushing quarterbacks, because not only are a lot of these young talented guys like Herbert and Burrow and Allen stuff good passers, but they're also pretty damn dangerous on the ground. So you just cannot fade the Konami Code anymore. It's gonna be known as the basic code from now on, because like I said, without it, you will not survive at the position. And if you do, it's only banking on seasons like the one that Rodgers is having. And even then, even in those seasons, you're going to have some boom bust weeks, right? Whereas I don't really care about boom bust at the wide receiver position because it's naturally volatile. Where I look for my floor is at the quarterback and running back positions. They should provide my team the weekly floor that I need to win. So, the good thing about rushing is they always provide you that floor, right? Like if you look at guys like Kyler, look at guys like Lamar Jackson, like, they don't bust nearly as much as pocket passers like Tom Brady. Like if you're Tom Brady and you don't throw for 3-4 touchdowns a game, you're basically, there's a high chance of you busting, right? And that's just down to basic math, basic arithmetic, how scoring is set up. This is why understanding your scoring is so important. This is why I wanted to dig into this topic. I've wanted to dig into it for a while, but it just took me forever to gather all the data, put it together, make the graphs, study the data and actually see what I can take away from it, right? Because a lot of times you do and pull this data together and there's no trend to be taken away. So you just waste a bunch of time. Luckily, this time I did it and I was able to take a lot of stuff away. So hopefully I've passed that on to you guys. Again, if you haven't read the full thread on Twitter, go there and check it out. I have some more details in there. But the gist of it is, man, you need to have some of these Konami Code quarterbacks coming in. And guys like Kyler Murray might be unattainable. I think Lamar Jackson is still very realistically obtainable given the down year that he did have and, the haters he has out there. So he might be one of those top end guys you can still acquire for a decent price. And I'm a buyer of Lamar Jackson 100%. Despite what all the doubters say, like, he's going to get hurt, blah, blah, blah. Like, all that shit is just narratives, man. None of it is true. They won't last. They're going to get hurt, blah, blah, blah. Like, look at the thread. Like, there's a cool thread in there from FB Injury Doc. What's his exact tag here? Edwin Porras. Sorry, dude, if I butchered your name, but at FB Injury Doc DOC, you can follow him and check out that thread. But it basically shows you that running quarterbacks don't get injured more than statue quarterbacks. If anything, prevents injury a little bit more because they're a little bit more mobile and they're not taking those low hits in the pocket. And a lot of these guys understand now to slide. Like Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson set the blueprint for running quarterbacks on how to survive and how to last in the league. You see Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, they're not taking big hits. They're running out of bounds, or they're running out, like they're not taking those brutal hits that guys from the past that used to take. So they're not doing like the Cam Newton thing anymore, right? They're not bulldozing defenders over and like shortening their lifespan. Like they are really, really, keen on that. So I'm not as worried about that going forward. Like if you look at my quarterback rankings, man, they're all going to be freaking Konami Code quarterbacks with the exception of maybe Patrick Mahomes, who I said already is more of like a hybrid Konami than anything else. And he's like one of those guys that is like basically one of the greatest of all time. And you can count him in for 40 plus touchdowns every single year, and he has the upside to hit 50 touchdowns a year. So he's someone that breaks this trend. But aside from that, you're basically looking at Konami quarterbacks, and I'm not going to be drafting or ranking non-Konami Code quarterbacks very highly. And then it's something that I've already done, but after doing this study, it's just like it's so freaking obvious to me that this is something that needs to be accounted for and is not talked about enough or accounted for enough in the current world. Like people are still trying to chase guys like Matt Ryan, because they think they'll put up a lot of passing yards, a lot of passing TDs, and the Drew Breeses are still getting drafted. Like that time is over, man. The NFL has changed. This is the modern game. The way they protect these quarterbacks now, that the risk of injury really is not much higher than any other quarterback, any non-mobile quarterback. Like it's way overblown and it's driven by a lot of like boomer narratives from back in the day, and that isn't really backed by anything. So I think hopefully you see this thread, the numbers that are in there, and it'll kind of show you a different way to look at things and how important Konami Codes quarterbacks really are. But in terms of targets, man, I'm going to talk about Ryan Tannehill. Obviously, that's my guy. I think he's going to be a value every time. I tweet about him all the time. But despite that, he's a value because he's going to be old, man. Dynasty players hate old players. And when I say old, I mean old in their eyes, not in my eyes, because he's still a low 30-year-old. He's only 4 months older than Russell Wilson. So he's got at least like 3 to 4 years left in his prime. And he didn't even, he rested a couple years in Tennessee as well, right? So he's got at least 3 to 4 years left. He's going to be my target again in super flex leagues. I think he's still going to be attainable at like near low end QB1 to QB2 pricing. So with my second quarterback, I'm always going to be targeting Ryan Tannehill. I did it last year. I'm going to do it again this year. I love him. So he fits that bill. Jalen Hurts, obviously, his price has skyrocketed, but still very, very obtainable. I released my combined quarterback rankings between the classes, and I think when you're sitting there on the clock with one of these rookie picks and Zach Wilson hype has built to an all-time high, you're going to be able to flip that pick for Jalen Hurts plus. And Jalen Hurts fits the model. He fits the model of Konami quarterback to a T. And he also happens to be someone who I think can improve in his mechanics and also improve as a passer. He's so limited there right now, but he looks way freaking better than Carson Wentz. I don't know what all these Carson Wentz truthers are still drinking the Kool-Aid on, but Jalen Hurts is definitely one of those guys that fits a bill and is attainable, and probably someone that you'll be able to target in the later rounds of your single QB drafts as well to kind of target that upside. So in redraft leagues, if you're playing that, definitely look for him in the late single digit, early double digit rounds. He's going to be someone that provides that upside. So those are the two guys that I think are going to be very, very obtainable. Maybe Joe Burrow coming off an injury discount might be able to grab him. But then other than that, it's the rookies, right? It's Trevor Lawrence, who won't be attainable at all because he's already built an all-time high. I mean, he's going to be a top 5 dynasty quarterback right out the jump. He's probably going to be a first round, if not a first round pick, an early second round pick at a minimum in super flex dynasty startups. I said that a while ago, and I think that's going to hold true, especially after he lands in Jacksonville with all those weapons. So but Justin Fields, man, Justin Fields, I think is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna be curious to see where he ends up landing because, it's narrative season. It's narrative season, and he put on a freaking show. But I bet you money, I've already seen it. A bunch of big name media heads talking about how Zach Wilson might be a better prospect than Justin Fields, and how Zach Wilson might be, the QB2 of the class. And if that happens, man, Justin Fields is going to be a goddamn value. He probably already is a value because he's much closer to Trevor Lawrence than he is to Zach Wilson, in my opinion. From both from a fantasy perspective and a real life perspective, like I said, I've been kind of tracking him since high school. He's an absolute stud. I'd be willing to fire off a late first round pick in one quarterback leagues for both Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence if you're a QB needy team. I think they are that valuable. So, but those are a couple of the Konami guys that are coming in as well. And then I think Trey Lance. Trey Lance is someone that's super raw. Probably similar to like Jalen Hurts in that way, except Jalen Hurts is even a better passer than Trey Lance because he has way more experience in college. And but he is an interesting one. He is someone that like has a low floor, but a very, very high ceiling, very similar to Jalen Hurts coming in. And if he gets that draft capital, his floor is going to be increased dramatically because you know he's going to get that shot. And that's all you need, right? He's a talented quarterback. So these are the guys that I think that you can kind of still sneak in to kind of leverage that Konami Code effect at reasonable prices, right? Ryan Tannehill, very proven. Jalen Hurts, still raw but developing, but very, very high upside as we've seen already. And then Trey Lance and Justin Fields. I think those are the guys that are going to be obtainable to a degree. I'm not saying they're buy lows because chances are if you're buy low, you probably stink, right? Like look at Daniel Jones. He's a buy low. Do you want to buy low on him? Because he provides a Konami Code quarterback. I don't want to buy low on him. So these are the guys that I'd be going after right now. And in your rookie drafts and your startup dynasty drafts to get that Konami upside exposure at a more reasonable and affordable price. All right. So target them frequently. Again, just if you're going to draft a freaking pocket passer, you better damn well make sure they are like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes type of players. Because if they aren't, and chances are they aren't because these players don't exist very often, there's only two of them for a reason, then you're putting yourself behind the eight ball in a significant disadvantage willingly. And that's not something you want to do in dynasty fantasy football. So that was the one topic I want to cover a lot of, dig in a little bit deeper. Threads are nice and all, but I can't really talk and cover in it as much detail as I want, given the character limitations and, what you can see and what I can show and, how many actually blocks of threads you can actually put on Twitter. So I'll always like to cover important topics like that in these video formats so you can see it and I can dive in. And if you have questions about it, DM me on Twitter, comment on the below, whatever it is you need. The other thing I do want to talk a little bit about is trading down, right? Trading down, and I've covered this a little bit before, but I want to cover it again because I think people are still excited in your dynasty leagues, and you can acquire. Now is the time to still try and acquire some rookie picks if it's possible. If you have guys in your leagues that are willing to sell now, absolutely pounce on it. But the reason why I want to cover this topic is there's trade opportunities, and the big championship performances are fresh in the minds of people, that are still thinking about it. And trading down, for me, the most successful place I do it is at the wide receiver position because running backs are extremely rare, right? You need the workhorse running backs to win. But wide receivers, I mean, Davante Adams obviously put this to the test because he put out an absolutely historic season, like top three, arguably, well, definitely the best fantasy performance of all time on a points per game basis because week 17 doesn't really count. But even with Davante Adams, like aside from him, I think any wide receiver I'm willing to trade down on, right? And, even someone like a Justin Jefferson, who has been an absolute stud and most would consider unmovable or untradeable, I'm still open to trading down on him because the wide receiver scoring gap just really isn't that big. And like where I've profited the most in my dynasty career is trading down on wide receivers and riding the gains on those assets I've traded down. And I'll give you an example of that, what I mean by that. I like to trade wide receivers at their absolute peak because there's nowhere else for them to go. I don't necessarily want to do that for running backs because when running backs are at their peak, they're scoring a crap load of points for me. And I need them to win my leagues. But like when wide receiver hit the peak, they haven't necessarily done that. Like look at Justin Jefferson, right? Like he is a great receiver, right? But on a week-to-week basis, he's not necessarily a league winner or providing you that league winning upside. Same with DK Metcalf. A lot of people have him as wide receiver one from a valuation perspective right away, right? And the reason why is because they're chasing that youth, right? And they're putting them there, expecting them to get there later. I'm always fine with cashing down there because one, there's a chance they might not reach that, right? There's a chance that DK Metcalf might not be the wide receiver one in the next couple of years. And you would have just cashed out at wide receiver one prices anyways. So that's why I like to trade down the wide receiver position. So you can always trade down and get a pick on top or get an asset on top. Give you an example of that. Last year, after last season, I traded DeAndre Hopkins, right? I felt like that was the last time to exit on DeAndre Hopkins. He was entering his like age 28 season. Obviously, he went on to have a monster fucking season this year. I didn't see that coming at all. But I traded down, and I'm happy with it because I traded down with DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen, and what I got was Calvin Ridley and DK Metcalf and like Miles Sanders. That was the deal that I did in one of my leagues, and it worked out really well, even though Miles Sanders was hurt. But I did end up with DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley. And if you look at DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley, most people have them in their top 10, top 5, top 8. Some people have DK Metcalf as a wide receiver 1 overall, right? So I'm always looking to trade down to that tier of young up and coming guys that I think can take that leap that haven't made the leap yet, because that's where most of the value gain is from. Like that round 3 to round 5 like area for wide receivers. Terry McLaurin's another great example, someone I acquired a lot of last year, right? AJ Brown was also kind of in there, that back end wide receiver 1 top that people had him at. DJ Moore the year before he made that massive leap was someone I acquired, and I'm always looking for these types of trade down opportunities. So this year, what you can do is take someone like a Davante Adams, right? Davante Adams coming off an absolutely historic season. Aaron Rodgers coming off one of his best seasons ever. Will they regress? Probably, right? And we don't know what Green Bay is going to do in terms of adding weapons. I'm not saying Davante Adams won't have another monster season, might be wide receiver 1 again next year. But if I can trade down for wide receiver 1 value now and not lose too much on the wide receiver side and still get a pick back, that is a deal I'm going to make 10 times out of 10. And who are some guys you can kind of get for something like a Davante Adams, right? You could probably get a T Higgins plus a first and more. And I think that is probably a deal that I'd be looking to explore. Maybe like a T Higgins, DJ Chark plus, right? Especially if you're not a top contending team, you should be looking to move off Davante Adams right now. If you're a middling team that like made the playoffs and got bounced first round, and you have some assets, but you're not sure if you're a top team and the top teams in your league are stacked, this is the time to move off of Davante Adams. And preferably you move off of him not to one of those top teams, but to another middling team that thinks they can compete next year and get some of their assets in return and get like a younger wide receiver. So I would definitely start exploring deals like that for someone like a Davante Adams, who is an absolute stud. And even though he's a stud, he's going to be hitting that age curve where value kind of craters a bit. The same age curve that DeAndre Hopkins went through this prior season. This is the peak time to sell Davante Adams. Whenever a player is coming off a historic year, you can explore selling. And I'm not saying sell high. I'm just saying explore trading for the betterment of your team by reloading some of those younger assets, right? And Davante Adams is probably one of the best to that. Last year, that was Michael Thomas. I did that with Michael Thomas in a couple leagues. But now it seems like Michael Thomas might be a buy low candidate, especially for contending teams. So can't do that anymore. But another player like that is my wide receiver 1 dynasty overall, Tyreek Hill. So this should tell you, like, when I say explore selling a player, doesn't mean I think they're bad or they're going to be declining or they stink or anything like that. Tyreek Hill was my dynasty wide receiver 1 since June of last year, and I've held that throughout. And he's tied to Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to be a stud going forward. But he is also approaching that age curve, and you can kind of get peak value for him right now, him and Davante Adams. You can get peak value for both of them. And if you're in leagues where people undervalue rookies, you might even be able to get like a Justin Jefferson plus, a CeeDee Lamb plus a first, right? These are the CeeDee Lamb plus a second even, right? These are all deals that I think you can get done. If you can trade down from a Davante Adams or a Tyreek Hill, it's like a CeeDee Lamb plus a second, or CeeDee Lamb plus a first for Davante Adams plus a second. Like those are the types of deals I'm looking at. If you can do any of those and you're a rebuilding team or you're a middling of the road team, you should absolutely do that because it resets your team. And someone like a CeeDee Lamb, like a T Higgins, absolutely have the upside, 3 years down the line that someone like a Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill have. That's why you're fine with making that trade because you're not losing out on the last time you're not losing out on it in the long run, and you're getting to reload with another rookie pick. So those are two guys that I'll explore selling. Stephon Diggs also falls in that category. He had a monster year. The reason why I'm not ranking him ahead of Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill in terms of great sell opportunity is because he didn't really have touchdowns line up, right? Although if you look at his week 16 championships, he won me a bunch of freaking leagues, and a lot of people might have that emotional attachment and remember that week. So you might be able to sell high on him as well. A 3 touchdown monster performance for Stephon Diggs there. But he's also in that age 27 year, one more year from now, he's going to hit that age value cliff, not the production cliff. He will still produce well into his late 20s and potentially early 30s. These are elite players. But in terms of the value cliff of how other players view them, he's absolutely getting to that edge. So those are 3 guys that I think you can explore trading down and getting one of these proven stud young wide receivers from this class or the prior class, and then getting a pick on top of that. Other guys, Brandon Ayuk, another great target. Chase Claypool, another great target. Both guys who I was not high on at all coming in as prospects, but they've proven me extremely wrong, and I'm more than happy to pivot after I've seen them perform in the NFL in their first year, just like how I did with Terry McLaurin. I'm going to get stuff wrong, right? But it's about how quickly you pivot and make the right decisions from there on out that really, really defines how you run a dynasty team. So I would be targeting all of those guys, like in that cluster of, Higgins, Lamb, and Ayuk, which is on a little bit on the higher end, and then Chase Claypool as well. So if you can trade down from those assets into some of those wide receivers and add rookie firsts, add rookie seconds, multiple rookie seconds, even add other assets, those are the types of deals that you should be exploring, and that's how you stay ahead of the game, right? Now, if you're a top end team like I am in one of my leagues where I have Davante Adams, I'm probably not going to be trading him because I do feel like I might just ride Adams into the sunset for the next couple of years to take advantage of what he's been able to do and the peak couple of years that he will have as the top receiver in the league as a target hog, because the scoring advantage is a little bit too hard to give up. But if you're not in that position, if you're not a locked in like top 1 to 2 team, absolutely start exploring trading down on these assets. And even if you are, if you can afford it, like let's say you're someone that has like Davante Adams and DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs or something like that. If you're lucky to be one of those guys, just take one of them and trade down and keep the other, right? And that way you reload and reset and continue to build on that dynasty down the line. So that's kind of how I approach the position of wide receivers. I look to trade down on a lot of these top end assets. Even some of the more middling ones, like a Calvin Ridley, right? I'm already seeing like sell highs on him. I don't know what his price will come out at, but if you can trade a Calvin Ridley for a T Higgins plus, that is also a deal I would explore. Like anytime I can trade down a wide receiver, basically anywhere between that wide receiver, like wide receiver 5, like downwards, like if you can trade down from a wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2 plus, like those are the deals you want to make, because no one freaking knows where these wide receivers are going to finish. Like there's the difference between like wide receiver like 8 and like wide receiver 20 something is like 1 point per game or something like that. Like it's pretty low. I don't remember what exactly it was, but it's something along those lines. So you can imagine like that's just like a couple TD swings, right? One way or the other, and those ranks will flip. So you want to get whatever's cheapest within those tiers. So however you have your wide receivers tiered, I have big tiers in those ranges. So anytime you can trade down within tiers, or even trade down a tier and add a rookie first round pick to refire on a very talented rookie class, you absolutely have to do it. All right. So trading down is a key aspect of my dynasty strategy, and it doesn't just apply to startup drafts. You can do it every single year, right? Like trading down from someone like a Davante Adams into like a CeeDee Lamb plus a first is no different than trading from like a first round pick, right, into like a third round plus a fifth, or a third round plus a first or something like that in a startup pick, which are all trades that you would happily make, right? So it doesn't change just because the startup is done, and that's the mindset you have to have when you're playing dynasty. That's the mindset I have. I'm always looking for trade down opportunities across the board, and most importantly, identifying who those buy high guys I have in those middle tier wide receivers are, and trading down into them, because that's where the money maker is. That's where the gains are to be had. There's no more gains to be had for someone like a Davante Adams, who's already the wide receiver 1 by most people's books. You can't rise anymore. There's nowhere to go, right? There's only down. So when you can capitalize on that value, crystallize that value for 2 assets, which do have lots of room, for multiple assets do have more room to grow, that's how you profit and stay afloat in dynasty. And that's how your teams don't go from like contenders to dust within like a year, right? That's how you keep reloading. We don't rebuild a lot of the times, we reload. If you do rebuild, that's fine too. But I'm saying like if you are a more high end team, you can continue to kind of reload your stock, right? That is how dynasty is played. That is where I found the most success, and the most success specifically with regard to wide receivers. So start exploring those opportunities, man. Like I said last week, the grind doesn't stop. This is where you start those conversations, build those bridges, build those trade partnerships, understand what your league mates want. And, I talked about this a little bit on Twitter, and I guess I'll cover it here real quick. But, a lot of people just look at the value of players, look at like ADPs, trade calculators, and that's like macroeconomic level, right? That's a macroeconomic, like if people value Davante Adams as the wide receiver 1 overall, that's a macroeconomic level. What you should really care about is the microeconomics within your own leagues. And I've said this before, every single league is its own economic system. It's its own economy. And even if everyone else values Davante Adams wide receiver 1, if no one in your leagues values him as such, then like it doesn't really matter, right? That's why I'm saying like you got to pay attention to that stuff, and I think not a lot of people do it. I keep notebooks on my league mates across all my leagues. What their tendencies are they the type to trade up? Are they the type to trade down? Are they the type to go after studs? Are they the type to overvalue youth? Like, understand your competition. That is the, part of the research is researching the players and the values. And, I spend a lot of my time on that. But the other part of it is researching your competition, understanding who you're playing against. I'm in a lot of analyst leagues and I follow them, right? I read their content. I know who they're high on. I do that level of research, because if you don't do that level of research, you're giving up a significant edge. And not a lot of people are willing to do that work. Now, I don't have a physical notebook because I'm not a boomer. I'm not like 90 years old, but I have like a spreadsheet and I have notes tracked for all these players and a lot of the trades they've made in the past that have caught my eye, right? And the way they structure their trades, so that when I approach them with the structure of a trade that I've seen them do before, because seemingly that would mean that they like it. That's how they like to do deals, right? So if I see someone that loves to trade vets for rookie picks, then I'm gonna go after that guy when I'm like close to the rookie draft if I'm loaded with the rookie picks, right? I'm gonna go to them and try and acquire those vets for those rookie picks, right? I'm not like I'm trying to rip them off. I'm saying, like, me, like, I love to trade rookie picks for more proven veterans to kind of balance out my strategy, right? So you got to keep notes and understand your league mates. And like, I think that's an aspect of the game. I might dedicate a full episode to that next time, just like what I do, what I look for, what are the things I track, what are the things I don't track, what are the things I pay attention to, what really catches my eye, how that adjusts to my trading strategy. I'm going to put out a new episode next week just on that, specifically on studying your competition and your league mates and what you should be looking for, because that's a big part of strategy that I don't think people cover much, and it goes under the radar, but it's just as important, if not more important, than studying the players. And I truly believe that that's how I've been able to have success in my dynasty career. I don't know if that's for everyone, but I'm like, I'm a psycho like that. So if you want to be a psycho and you want to win, have that winning edge, like, I really do think you have to do it. And a lot of the best players I play with do that as well. So just a little tidbit there. That's all we got for today. Bit of a long episode there, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. I think these episodes are going to get longer as we go into the Dynasty offseason, because the topics I'm going to want to cover are more in depth, take a lot more research, take a lot more time for me to go over. So hopefully it's not a big issue for you guys. I know some of you guys like shorter episodes, and, if you do, no problem. Like, we'll have those shorter segments as well on the channel, on the Bunkbed Breakdowns channel. So you'll have a little bit of both. Before these Market Watch Mondays, they tend to be and will be a little bit longer going in the offseason. I'll probably have more guests on as well. The first guest I had was Ray. Couldn't have asked for a better guest, but there's a lot of other smart guys out there I want to talk to. So if you guys have someone that you think I should bring on the pod, it's a great match for me and for the Market Watch Monday segment. DM me, comment below, let me know who you would like to see, and I'll track these guys down, try and get them on the squad and on the show. All right, that's all we got. If you enjoyed, please hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, follow me on Twitter, engage with me. I'm always on there. And, as I mentioned, I'll post a Twitter link for you guys on the thread that you guys can check out on the Konami Code. But if you haven't, just go there, follow me. It's on my pinned tweets. You'll see it there. It's a long one, probably take you 3 minutes to go through, but I promise you it'll be worth it. A lot of good, juicy nuggets in there for you guys to digest. All right, that's all we got for this week. See you all next week on another episode of Market Watch Mondays. Peace.